So hello fellow Earthlings, this is Earthling 6455463728, and Hannibal Buress was on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. He's talking about a special that he made, produced himself, released on YouTube, and he happened to mention that the last time that he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he had stayed after his podcast and got into it a bit with Sam Harris. Sam Harris is, I don't remember what his profession is exactly, but he comes across as this kind of philosopher type dude who has this calm voice, rich vocabulary, and he speaks on things that might be controversial at times, but he tries to use science and different studies in order to give his point a lot of times. So Hannibal Buress was saying maybe he should have left, and how he had mocked Sam Harris because he said that Sam Harris was a human PowerPoint and he had all these statistics and da-da-da-da. And I didn't realize what the topic they had been talking about was. As it comes down, he was talking about police officers, and I guess what they had gotten into, police brutality specifically, what they had gotten into was that Sam Harris was trying to explain potentially why police officers would interact with black people in such a way that it might seem, I think is what he was saying, it might seem as though there was racism involved, or systemic racism, why it might exist. It didn't really seem like he believed it. What he was coming across with was that there was a particular individual who said that he had never seen police officers treat white people. He hadn't seen videos of similar things with white people as he had seen with black people. And he had asked if people would send him stuff, and they did. And he's like, wow, I'm sorry, I didn't know that there were all these videos that exist of white police officers and police officers, I suppose, in general, treating white people poorly, and shootings or stuff like that. And I guess he went down the road where, well, look at the amount of murders that black people are involved in as victims and as perpetrators. When you take that into account, you can understand why police officers might be scared to when they encounter a black person, you know? Also, he was going into the numbers, I suppose, with an idea also to show, I think he was giving a personal example as well. He said a police officer treated him badly, and if he was a black person, he would have thought, hey, this has to do with racism. But of course it didn't, because here he is, a white guy, and whatever race the police officer was, it might not have had any racism involved in that. So if you connect the dots, this is what he appeared to be saying, that one, white people are similarly victimized by the police. It does exist, it happens. Two, given the amount of murders as victims or perpetrators that black people are involved in, police have a reason to be scared when they're interacting with black people. And three, given his personal experience, there will be moments where no racism was involved, where a police officer is treating somebody poorly. And, you know, of course, all the videos that the guy got is proof that, yeah, these things do happen to white people. So based on all of this, Hannibal Buress, I think he started getting upset because he was basically started mocking Sam Harris at some point, and saying, you know, you have all these statistics and you have all of these supposed facts, but you've never been through this stuff. You've never had friends who've been killed. You never had these interactions yourself. And Sam Harris is like, yeah, that's true. I haven't been in a similar position. I'm not a black person. He didn't say but. Here are my facts, da da da. But at the same time, he was putting forward this theory of his. And yeah, well, I guess this is the point where I interject with my opinion. And my opinion is that how can someone who is so smart or sounds so smart, has such a rich vocabulary, be such a moron? And I use the word moron, to myself as well. I feel in many instances with respect to women. That's a particular, subject or a theme where I am horrible. There are many girls who liked me. I didn't realize it, or the way that I acted in certain situations, I just regret. So I feel like a moron too. And I think anybody can be a moron. And I think Sam Harris was being a moron with his, consistent tone, his rich vocabulary, his seemingly airtight version of events. And I say version of events because it's pretty simple. Black people have had a problem with police from, as far as I've heard recently, and I'd have to investigate it myself. The police were invented to find escaped slaves. And at that point, there was no high murder rate in Detroit or any number of cities like LA and other places like that. So obviously, at that point, a cop had no concern or need to be worried about his safety when he was pursuing these runaway slaves. And that's in the US. Now, after that, during the civil rights era, before that, after slaves were freed and before the civil rights movement, black people again would have encountered problems with the police in the South, clearly, and not just with the police, just with people in general. You had segregation, and even in the North, they clearly had problems as well. There was redlining and all of these different things. I think that would have happened all across America when black people were coming back from World War II and other wars, and they realized that they weren't getting their just desserts, whether in the North or the South. And they would have had problems with authorities everywhere. And at that point, I don't think, Al Capone would have been in Chicago, as far as I know. So black people weren't killing people in Detroit at that point, but they would have had a problem with the authorities. There were laws specifically geared against black people with respect to marijuana. I think that had to do with Hispanic people and black people. I remember a quote that said, when darkies start smoking, they think they're as good as a white person. They're also, even Muhammad Ali, he would have had to encounter things like this. Malcolm X and the Panthers and all of these people, I'm sure that was not just in the South. And there was the things that were happening in Detroit and LA and various places, they would not have been the way that they are now for Sam Harris to use the excuse that police have to be worried when they see a black person. They still would not have had to worry because there was all of this. But here it is that Sam Harris is coming up with, I'm sure that he means to be nice. He's trying to use his intelligence to make sense of things. But he is doing what so many people have done throughout the years, which is to blame black people for the position that they're in, where people are discriminating against them. And to explain it away, he might not say if black people would just, well, actually he did. He said that there was a problem. Many of these problems were with respect to how people reacted to the police. And if they didn't react like that, then they wouldn't get shot. And he was saying that's a problem for black and white people. So there's that. So there's that part of it where I think Sam Harris was just basically a moron. His theory was moronic, and I think if you'd listened to Hannibal Buress and his points, because Hannibal was saying you just went straight to murder. Who's talking about murder? I'm talking about walking in the street as a 16-year-old kid, and he kept getting cut off where he couldn't finish what he was saying. Afterwards, I was, why is Hannibal Buress cutting off Sam Harris so much? And I realized now that, it's because Sam Harris kept cutting off Hannibal Buress when he's trying to explain, I'm just walking. And but you fit the description. I can't believe that those things were passing again from Sam Harris's mouth to explain police brutality and why still just walking, it was black people's fault again. Like they say now, walking while black, going to what is it, the coffee place while black, everything while black is a problem. And Hannibal Buress is like, not Hannibal Buress, Sam Harris is like, it is. The next thing is that Sam Harris seemed to be completely discrediting Hannibal Buress's personal experience, So he had his statistics, and Hannibal Buress's experiences are going to be anecdotes. They're going to be anecdotal evidence of X or Y or Z. It's you personally, in the same way that it was me personally, where if I was black, I would think that my interaction with the cop was based on racism. Maybe it's you, But statistics are how we get to the truth, he's saying. But they aren't exactly. Statistics are about anecdotes. You have an anecdote, which is one single story. You compile a massive amount of anecdotes, and that's where statistics come from. Now, you can do it in a formal way where it becomes statistics, or you can be like as a person who experienced these anecdotes, whereas your experiences, especially if you've had enough of them, makes you an expert on a particular topic because of your experience. Because of your experiences, you're an expert, because you've had enough anecdotes to be like a living stats, a person who has stats that affected their life. And it happened when we're doing artificial learning, machine learning. You give the machine a whole bunch of individual anecdotes, and they learn a particular task based on finding patterns in all of these many different single instances. So I think the idea of dismissing anecdotal evidence from someone who has had a lot of experience in a particular field, or just in life as being a black person, I think that's moronic. And until I was in this, thinking about this, I wouldn't have seen it this way. But that's what it is. An anecdote, yes, it's untrustworthy. That's why you gather many anecdotes to form statistics. Individually, they're not useful, but you can gather them formally and you can gather them informally. So anyway, Hannibal got into it. Unfortunately, he couldn't articulate himself and his position. And I think between Sam Harris's interruptions and his subsequent interruptions of Sam Harris, I think that, and the fact that he was high, he and Joe Rogan had smoked before in the previous podcast, and maybe Hannibal Buress had just not had practice in debating or talking about these things with a particular person. So he wasn't able to, put the smackdown on Sam Harris's illogical thinking to me. So before I go, I wanted to mention one last thing. There was somebody else there who was from Australia, and I don't know his name because this was a recording of a recording. And at some point he said something in his own stupidly. Joe Rogan brought up the fact that, Australia has had horribly treated the Aboriginals. They took their kids away, etc., etc. But that person's point at the end of the thing was that, okay, I know things are bad in Australia, but I think the fact that when I come here, things are so different that I feel like it's potentially worse here because of blah, 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 blah. For example, with the word the N word. He didn't say the N word. He actually just said it. And he's like, well, we don't have it over there. And when you say stuff like that, I'm like, whoa. They were like, whoa. And I was like, whoa. It's like, yeah. It's like, well, yeah, it is the N word. And this time he did say the N word. And that's not why I thought he was stupid. I thought it's really disconcerting when somebody says what is a curse word or a really bad word in your language, but it isn't in theirs or in their context, where it doesn't matter that much. And it's really strange, but still, he is in America, so that's kind of weird for him to feel so free that he's being recorded and he's saying it so flippantly. But it's kind of understandable. If you go to some other place and you say, like, I know, in France, I think zoot is like shit or something like that. You say zoot alors, a French person might be like, oh my God. But in English, zoot is like nothing, right? Or I think salope, it means really dirty stuff or whatever. And again, it's just a word in English. But where I thought he was stupid, he was like, yeah, well, things in Australia are really not that bad, da da da. And I'm like, but wait, if you look at the number of Aboriginal people incarcerated, as with respect to their percentage of the population, and I don't know what the fact is, but I know for New Zealand it's high. I know around the world, the Dalits in India, the Burakumin in Japan. If you look at anybody, Christians in Muslim countries, they're always minorities, and people pick on them and put them in prison more often, and they have all around more awful lives. And I can't believe that this guy was basically saying, well, I know things are bad over here, but I think that we have a better handle on them than you guys do because of the way that it sounds when you all talk about it here. And I thought that was moronic, given the high percentage of Aborigines who, they're not even in government in the US. They're not in the US, in Australia. They're not even represented. You see these people whose lands that y'all came to, just like the Native Americans, and they are just like the Native Americans. They're treated in the same way. They're disregarded in the same way. They're imprisoned in the same way. But because of the conversations that I hear when I come to the US, I think we have it better over there. Because you guys killed out most of them? Is that why? I don't know. Because it sticks in my head. I remember one story where a guy, they mentioned that this guy went up a river with his gun, shooting the Aborigines that he found at the side of the river. Not because they did anything to him. He figured they were like vermin and he needed to exterminate them. And I don't know if this guy knows his history. He knows about how people took the Aborigines kids away, just like they did Native Americans in North America. And I think he's just being a moron. But like I said, I feel like I've been a moron on many issues. I've hurt people's feelings all over life. But specifically, I wish Hannibal Buress had been able to speak a little bit better. But it's unfortunate, but that's the case. Anyway, guys, wish me luck. You can like, unlike, comment, and as a bonus, you can share or subscribe. And of course, you can even do nothing. Peace.